Hello, everybody. Today, I'm excited to share an analysis with you that'll help you grow your digital audience or your DAU. But first, I'd like to kickstart a conversation with you about installs. Within the mobile games industry, it's common that companies will receive installs from organic sources and from paid sources. So today we're going to be focusing on optimizing your paid sources by looking at the performance of ad networks that are sending installs to your app or mobile game. So if we look at the analysis behind me, what we're doing is we're looking at installs from November of 2023, and we're looking at their performance segmented by ad network over the leading 365 days. And we're looking at the number of login days per install cumulatively. And what you'll notice is that there are a couple of ad networks that are overperforming the pack. We have Ad Network 12, which is the upper yellow line, which is performing fantastically. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to recreate this analysis for your own business so that you can identify those ad networks, much like Ad Network 12, that are overperforming the average, allowing you to redivert or reallocate your marketing spend to ad networks who are much better at sending you more retentive installs, allowing you to grow your DAU better. So let's go ahead and get started on this together. Here we are in MySQL, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with a installs table. So let me pull a few records for you. And this is what our table looks like. So the very first thing we want to do is we just want to take installs that are coming in from an ad network. So we're going to say where attribution network is not null. By doing this, we're just taking installs that are paid and coming in from an ad network. Okay, wonderful. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to select the very first install instance or date per customer. So we'll do customer ID. We want the install date. We also want the ad network. So we'll do attribution name. And then we want to put an index in here so that we can select the very first install instance per customer. So we will do row number over, and then we're going to partition by each customer by their customer ID, and then we're going to order by install date time ascendingly. We'll call this install index. Now let's just run this to make sure it executes here in our database. Okay, wonderful. So we actually have an example that we can look at right now. We have a customer ID ending in 2514, and they installed twice. Once in January of 2023, and then a second time in August of 2023. And you can see that the very first install date, which was January 3rd, 2023, got flagged with a value 1 in the install index column. As you can see, this player or customer's second install date, August 19, 2023, received a value of 2. So what we're going to do in future steps is basically only take this first record right here, their very first install. So we're going to do this for all data records, and we'll do it in a future step together. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this data. We will put it in a subselect like this, and we can call it install index. So what we're going to do is let's just take all of the fields, and we have to remember to add the install index prefix. So we will grab all of this stuff, put it up here very simply, and we actually don't need this. This is going to go in the where clause, where we're going to filter it for values equal to 1. But what we need to do is we need to add this prefix right here. So we will add this. And then the last thing we need to do is this. And set the install index value equal to 1, meaning we just want the customer's very first install. Any subsequent or future installs you can just drop. We're not interested in those. Okay, let's run this. Okay, great. It looks like we have everything we need. The next thing we need to do is, as of now, we are taking the very first install instance per customer, but we just want to look at installs from November of 2023 so that we have a leading 365 days to recreate the analysis that was shown earlier in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and add that additional filter to our where clause. We will say and the most important thing is we have these install dates, right? Let's reset those to the first of the month. So we will do date format. We will do year, month, okay. We'll do this. And then what we want to do is take the current date, which is December 28, 2024. We'll do that. And we will do the same thing. Let's take this and we're going to reset it to the first of the month, which will be December 1st, 2024. So we will do that. Just going to do a little bit of copying here. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to put it in this parameter right here. And then what we want to do is this is currently referencing the value of December 1st, 2024. We actually want it to be November 1st, 2023. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to do a date, add, and then we'll say interval -13 month. So in total, what's happening with this logic in this highlighted line right here? Well, we set out to basically take all of our installs and filter them for just installs from November of 2023 so that we have a leading 12 months or 365 days to do our analysis. So in order to filter out those installs, what we're saying is take this install date. It could be any install date historically, today, and historically, and reset it to the first of the month. And then what we want to do is we'll take the current date, we'll reset it to the first of the month, which is December 1st, 2024. And then we're going to subtract 13 months so that this value is November 1st, 2023. So what ends up happening is we're only keeping installs from November 2023. And I'll show you that in the output. So let's run a few records right now. And after running these few records, you'll see that we're just keeping or filtering for November 2023 installs. And if you look at this second column, you'll notice we did just that. So November 1st, 2nd, 5th. So just November 2023 installs. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. Let's go ahead and wrap all of this into another subselect. We'll remove this limit. We'll just call this installs filter. Great. And we're just going to copy the fields from the previous subselect into this new one. We'll just take this. The only thing we need to be careful about is changing out the prefix or the name of the subselect. So let's change that out real fast. Take this. Okay, great. Now, the very next thing we need to do is we have installs from November of 2023, and we did that specifically because we want to have a leading 365 days or a leading 12 months to look at our data. So how do we do that? We bring across dates that are equal to or greater than our install date, so that we can get those leading 365 days, allowing us to do the type of analysis that we looked at earlier in this tutorial. And luckily for us, in this database, we actually have a table of dates. So I will show you this table now. And this table is just called dim date with a column called date that has a bunch of dates, a bunch of date values that we're going to use. So we're going to take this entire subselect right here, and we're going to join it to this date table. So we will do this. Let me create a space so that you can see this visually. We'll do a left join over to this date table. We're going to call it dates, and we'll simply do it on dates.day is greater than or equal to the install date. So that's it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this date column from our second table, this table right here, and we're going to put it right here. And I'm actually going to move this attribution name column up here next to customer ID. Not necessary to do that, but just visually makes more sense to me. And here's our entire query so far. So let me just give a high level overview or summary of what's going on. The last thing we did was to basically filter out installs for just installs that happened in November of 2023. We did that because we want to have at least a leading 365 days or a leading 12 months to do our analysis. Now, in order to get those leading dates or leading 365 days, we joined over to a date table, making sure that the date is greater than or equal to the install date to provide all of those leading dates per install that happened in November of 2023. So that's where we are right now. Let's execute this query together so we can ensure that everything is working correctly. Let's look at one customer example so that you can see this logic visually in the output. We will say where the customer ID is equal to this value right here. And then most importantly, let's order this. Okay, so looking at the output together with you, you can see that we have this customer that had an install date of November 23rd, 2023, and we're bringing across all leading dates that are equal to or greater than the install date. And you'll notice that this is happening because the first date that we brought back is the same as the install date, November 23rd, 2023. And then from there, it ascends to the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, etc., etc. So everything's working perfectly. That's great. So I just deleted that order by and the where logic, which was just filtering for that one customer. We want to remove that so that we have all of our data again. Okay, great. So the very next thing we want to do is we want to know how many login days has this specific customer had by this leading date. So we have every customer, their very first install date. We kept the ones that installed for the first time in November of 2023. And we have all the leading dates, right? The 365 or 12 months of leading dates. So what we want to do is per leading date, per customer, we want to count the number of times they've logged in or how many login days they've had. So we're going to do that together now. It's actually a very interesting and fun thing to do together. So we will step through this now by first wrapping this subselect and calling it leading dates. Now, as we've done before, all we need to do is basically bring up these columns from the previous subselect. And we just did that there, which is great. So we're going to copy this, put this here, 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 and here. To summarize what we're going to do next, let's walk through one example. So we have this customer ID ending in 25536. And what we want to do is we know that they installed November 23rd, 2023. And we have all these leading dates. So what we want to do is per leading date, we want to ask, okay, how many login days have they had? Right? So for example, they installed on November 23rd, 2023. By November 25th, 2023, how many login days have they had? Have they logged in 3 times, or has it just been once, or has it been twice? And we're going to do that for each one of these leading date values. Great. So let's actually do that. What we're going to do is we're going to join to a customer logins table. So I'm going to take this, and our SQL table is called fact player logins, and I'll show you a few records from this table that we're about to join to. As you can see, it's a login date per customer. So if a customer logged in on 7 different dates, you'll have 7 records in this table. So let's go ahead and conduct this join together now. We'll do a left join over to fact player logins. We'll just call this logins, and we'll do it on leading dates dot customer ID equals logins dot customer ID. And then this is the special part. We'll say, and we'll do logins dot login date has to be less than or equal to the leading dates dot date value. So again, this line right here is the part of the join that probably needs the most explaining. And what's happening is we're going to the second table that has logins or login dates per customer. And what we're saying is we're going to join on customer. So we're going to join on customer ID between these two data sets. And we're going to join where the login date value is less than or equal to the leading date value. And what that's going to allow us to do is to do a count of login days by the leading date value. So we will call this login days, and then we will group by everything. And we'll put the group by right here. And what this is going to do is create a running total or a cumulative total of login days that each customer has made by days since their install. So for example, it could be 5 days since a customer is installed. That means the number of login days could be at the most 5, or it could be at the least 1, or it could be some value in between. But we were tracking this because we were doing a count or a running total of login days per leading date value for each customer and their install date in November of 2023. Okay, so let's run this and take a look at a few records. Okay, great. So here's our data. And let me just go through a quick explainer with you on what's going on. So we have our customer, we have their ad network that they installed on, their install date, then we have all of these leading dates. And for each of these leading date values, we're doing a count of login days that have happened on that date and previously, stretching back to their install date. And what that's doing is it's keeping an accounting of the running total of login days each of these installs have had by days since install. So now that we have this data, let's go ahead and aggregate it so that we can rebuild that analysis that we looked at earlier. So as we always do, we'll just call this entire subselect ag, and then we will prepare our data for Excel. So the first thing is the x-axis is days since install. So let's create that column. We will do a date diff, between the leading date and the install date, and we'll call this days since install. Now all we need to do is just do a count, call this installs, and then we need to take these cumulative or running total login days and just sum them. Call this cumulative login days. And we're actually going to divide these two values together. We'll do cumulative login days divided by installs, right? But we're going to segment it by the ad network. So we're going to add that here. Let's put that here, and we will call this ag.attribution name. And anything we are not aggregating, we need to put in the group by. Okay, so we are ready to run this query in its entirety. But first we need to change out a few of these prefixes. So this needs to be this right here. This needs to be this. And we'll make some changes in our group by. And then we should be ready to go. Okay, great. So here's our data by ad network, or grouped by ad network and days since install. We have the count of installs and their running total or cumulative amount of login days. So let's go ahead and move this over to Excel so we can visualize this analysis in a way that brings strategic value to your company or your business. Okay, so here we are in Excel. Here is our data. Let's just add one new column. We will call this cumulative logins per install. And it's just going to be the login days divided by the number of installs. And all we need to do is pivot this data a little bit and then visualize it into a chart. So let's grab all this data. We'll do insert pivot table. Okay, fantastic. And then we'll bring the day since install over to the rows, and then the attribution name across the top in the form of columns. And then we'll do the calculated field, cumulative logins per install, right here in the values. And let's just do a couple of things. We'll remove the grand totals for rows and columns. We'll do a little bit of a label filter where it is less than or equal to 365. We just want the leading 12 months or 365 days in this analysis. And I believe we are almost done. Let's just select the data from the pivot table and let's begin to visualize this. Okay. So this is looking very, very good. So as you can see, we're comparing all of the ad networks to each other for installs from November 2023. And what pops out is Ad Network 12, this yellow trend line here, is outperforming all of the other ad networks in a pretty noticeable way. So what we can deduce from this is if we have a active marketing spend budget or user acquisition budget, that we should move it over to Ad Network 12 because it's superior to the other ad networks when it comes to bringing your business installs that retain much longer. So again, the metric that we're using is login days per install, and we're looking at it cumulatively. And what that means again is that Ad Network 12 is superior to the other ad networks in accomplishing this. So, if you want to do a better job of growing your digital audience or your DAU, it makes strategic sense to move more of your marketing spend or user acquisition budget over to Ad Network 12. So, this is super important because, as we know in the mobile games industry, these paid install channels are brutal. Day one retention is about 35 to 40%. So, as a business owner, you're doing everything you possibly can to maintain and grow your DAU. So, this is an analysis that you can do or replicate for your own business so that you can identify these sweet spots or ad networks that are highly favorable to you growing your DAU. And you're doing that by looking at cumulative login days per install over time. I hope this tutorial has helped. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much.